Well, this week on the Debunking Economics podcast, the EU, it's in a bit of a state, isn't it? Germany narrowly has missed a recession, but it could go back there soon. We've got riots in Paris. In fact, we have for the last 31 weeks. The Italians, seemingly ungovernable and facing fines for their spending habits. People leaving Greece en masse, and 1 in 3 young people in Spain out of work. Not exactly a sterling success, is it? In fact, thank God the UK hung on to sterling. So is the EU anti-growth? Is it just making matters worse? And how could it all be fixed? Simple question. That's this time on the Debunking Economics podcast. So, Steve, we've spoken before about how the euro helps the German economy because it's worth less than the Deutschmark would have been if Germany was on its own, given its high level of exports. So Germany's got a trade advantage over the rest of Europe, actually against the rest of the world in a way, with those countries with floating exchange rates don't have this benefit. But look at them now. GDP growth in Germany this year is expected to fall to 0.5% or less. It's narrowly missed a recession. Forecasts for the EU put real GDP growth across the bloc at just 1.6% compared to 2.3% in the US. And within Europe, it's at 0.1% for Italy at best. And the European Central Bank doesn't know what to do. It can't take interest rates any lower without going into negative territory. It's got rid of its QE program. Now it's offering cheap loans to banks, what they're calling targeted long-term refinancing operation. But it's not monetary measures, is it, that's causing the problem in Europe? It's the fiscal stuff. It's the control on spending, isn't it? Which, when times get tough, which they are now, you want to spend your way out. But the European approach is no. It's austerity all the way.
Yeah, and this is, you look at it and they've got an incredible advantage out of the euro itself internally, and even that they're stuffing up, which is an impressive achievement when you look at it. Because you say Germany's virtually in recession or running a 10% of GDP trade surplus.
Yeah.
And the reason is that at the same time as doing that, they're cutting back on government spending, so massive austerity there. And then the Germans themselves aren't borrowing up big to buy housing on the same scale that America did when the similar policies were in effect there under the Clinton years. So the economy, if you all try to save money, what actually goes down is GDP. Growth falls.
Yeah.
And that's the situation we're in. So it's amazing how it's backfiring even on the one that it should be advantaging, which is Germany.
Well, in Germany, they call it the Schuldenbremse, the debt brake, which is just an internal measure. That says federal government debt shouldn't be any more than 0.35% of GDP a year. And then for individual states within Germany, they're saying by 2020, they can't run any structural deficit at all. So, they are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's actually data I didn't know. That's in addition to the Maastricht Treaty limits. And that
yeah, that's right. No,
the internal German ones only applied to Germany.
Yeah. That's right. No,
wow,
they've gone beyond the Maastricht. They're saying, no, we can be even more austere than Maastricht tells us.
So, oh, my God. Yeah.
And yet, here they are. They've got this big downturn in the German car manufacturing, and we're told, the large part of that is because they haven't shifted to electric cars. And yet, so they haven't made the structural change. They still make good cars. They just haven't adapted fast enough. And yet there's never, why? Because there's never been a cheaper time to borrow. Surely companies would be saying, okay, we just need to retool.
But in fact, they're not borrowing, and the private sector debt is falling.
Yeah.
In Germany, and then of course government debt is falling, and it's massive trade surplus. The only thing adding a positive to the whole thing. What you're doing is you're getting less investment, less growth, less GDP. Let's go back to the basics here, because this is I'm trying to get this point through to people, and in one way it illustrates one of the weaknesses of money itself, because people talk about money as being a means of exchange and a store of value, and the thing is they actually have that's a contradictory purposes, and this I think is. Germany's fallen for this very, very badly. So if you individually decide to save, if you're earning 200x billion, whatever, euro a year, and you decide to save by spending 100 million less per year, if your income is currently at 2 billion and your expenditure is 2 billion, you're saving nothing. You make that decision, you're spending 1.9 billion, you're getting, you're earning 2, you're making a surplus. That looks great. But if there's a set amount of money, if you assume a set amount of money and there's a total of 300x, let's say working 300 euros, I'll leave the billions out of it. So you've got 100 euro in your account. You spend 100 per year on one sector, 100 per year in another. You're spending 200 per year. They're doing the same back on you. You're getting 100. Your spending is 200 per year. Your income is 200 per year. You saved nothing. You decide to spend 95 per year on them, and they still spend 100 on you. You save 10. But what's happened with the fixed amount of money in the system, your positive savings are then negative. Everything cancels out to zero. And this is one reason I'd like to abolish the word savings from macroeconomics.
Right. Because it's to do with this. What you're describing is the circulation of money, in effect, aren't you?
I think you look at circulation of money, you can't create more money by circulating it alone. So if you're just circulating the stuff and one of you decides to save, then your bank balance will increase by the amount that you decide to save, so long as the others continue spending at the same rate. But you don't create any more money. So that happens if your account goes from being 100 to 110, courtesy of your savings, the other two go from 100 each to 95. Your plus 10 becomes their minus 5 each, and there's no change. What actually happens is the amount of money you decide to save is the amount by which income falls, because your expenditure is income. So if you decide to spend 10 less per year and there's no compensating increase by the others, your attempt to save actually causes income to fall by precisely the same amount. And this is the fallacy of composition Keynes called the widow's cruse. And when Germany is demonstrating it by trying to get everybody to save, GDP is falling.
It just makes logical sense, doesn't it? That when if you think that you're out of work and you've got an opportunity to get a job, but to do that job you need a computer. To get that computer, you've got to borrow some money. You borrow the money for the computer because without the computer, you're still unemployed. I mean, it makes sense that when times are tough, you have to borrow to get yourself out of difficulty. But that seems to be outside the German psyche. And of course, they are determining the rules of the EU by and large.
Yeah. And this is why the common reason I'm not against private creation of money, because like in my own, as you know, podcast listeners know, in my own personal case, I lent money to one of my sisters to enable her to establish a business. The amount of money I lent her is 330,000 Australian dollars. That business is now turning over $75,000 a year. Now, if she'd borrowed that money from a bank, that would have created $330,000 in the local economy, which would have added to the actual money in circulation. She would have been making that $75,000 anyway, and the $75,000 with an interest. If she was paying 10% interest, which of course is, I'm not charging her interest, and the bank itself would charge half that, she'd still be coming out ahead because she's lending $75,000 for a $30,000 per year servicing cost.
Yeah.
If you have a function,
because you've lent her the money, you've taken it out of the economy. In effect, that's money that you would have been spending.
Trust me, there are plenty of businesses in Amsterdam now getting a lot of cash if I had the repayment back. So yeah, so it ends up being non-creative to treat money as something you have to conserve. And this is where I say the two functions of money, predominant functions, conflict with each other, because being a medium of exchange means you want it to turn over. Being a store of value means you want to hoard it.
Yeah.
And the two work against each other.
Yeah, so it's the old running a country, like or in this case running a continent, like you're running a household budget. Yeah. So the irony.
So I do see the EU, therefore, as being anti-growth.
So there's the answer to the question. Is the EU anti-growth? Yes, says Steve Keen. But we have an answer for the EU. Is there a better way forward? If you want to hear that, you'll have to listen to the full version of this podcast. And you can do that by subscribing to Steve Keen on Patreon. If you become a supporter of him at patreon.com/Prof Steve Keen, pledge $10 or more support each month, and then you'll get access to this and all the other 150 or so far podcasts in this series. Or you can become a subscriber as well at debunkingeconomics.com. That's it for now. Hopefully see you back here for the full-length episode. If not, we'll catch you again with another one next week. Thanks for listening.